Thank you very much. But my role is to moderate and to observe the time. So I'm the bad guy. But anyway, this is how it is. So thank you for taking part in this panel discussion, and we wish you the best for your future. And now we are proceeding to the next session, which is entitled Driving Growth, the Power of Greek Industry in Shaping the Economy. And I would kindly ask Mr. Vettas, Mr. Margonis, and Mr. Manesis to take their seats. The moderator of the discussion will be Mr. Dimitris Koutsopoulos. He will talk about this very important topic that relates to the economy. Ready? Okay. Okay. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us here today. Good morning, everyone. It is a great pleasure to have you all here today in order to discuss about a topic which, in my view, concerns everyone, concerns the economy. We're going to talk about industry and the dynamics it has, how it can affect the Greek economy, but also the potential it has for the future, and how it can also affect the development trajectory of the country. The title is Driving Growth, the Power of Greek Industry in Shaping the Economy. The Greek industry has a significant contribution to the GDP. 12% of the workforce is employed in the industry, which is something of great importance. And what we have seen during the last few years is that there are sectors like the renewable energy sources that present significant growth. We have the pleasure to have with us Mr. Vettas, President of the Foundation for Economic and Industrial Research, Mr. Margonis, CEO of Papastratos, Mr. Manesis from Hellenic Halyvougia, and I would like to ask the first question addressed to all, so that we can set the pace of the discussion. So what is the role of the Greek industry today, and how will this impact the developmental trajectory of Greece? Yes, this is something that we have been talking about extensively. It is very difficult to approach it in a way that is different to the approaches that have already been followed. But maybe the best way to approach this topic right now is to say that it will be a sample, and I mean by that the participation and the growth of industry, of the future of the wider economy. And allow me to explain myself. First of all, when we say industry, we basically mean manufacturing, which globally is the sector that can have increased productivity because it incorporates new technologies faster and more directly. And apart from that, there is also mining, energy, water, and so forth. Energy is a separate story on its own. Manufacturing was a sector where we were lagging behind here in Greece during the last few years, at least since the 1980s, when the protectionism of the Greek economy actually receded. Since we became members of the European Union, it was then that it became evident that certain industries were not that competitive. Then investments were made. We went through some positive and negative times. And in the crisis, since 2010, that is, the investments in Greek manufacturing were the part of the investments that resisted and withstood, despite the fact, and this is something that we should discuss a little bit further, despite the fact that construction and houses, which were the biggest part of the economy, collapsed. And why am I saying that? Because a large part of the Greek manufacturing and industry in general was turned towards construction and housing. Even though these collapsed, there were many businesses that managed to survive, to reestablish themselves, to change the way in which they operated, both domestically but also abroad. They made the most of the fact that the wages were low because of the crisis, and now that there is a stabilization of the economy, we can see a significant part of this manufacturing, I wouldn't say blossoming, but still having a very positive trajectory. The point is that we need to further increase the participation of manufacturing in the Greek economy. Otherwise, it will be impossible, and I will use this word, impossible, to reach the expected growth rates. That is from 2%, which is now to 3% and even above, because without a greater contribution of the manufacturing and of the surrounding sectors like startups with more exports of products, we won't be able to get the increase of productivity that is required for that. Okay, and I would like to give the floor to Mr. Margonis, an initial intervention about manufacturing today. Thank you very much. I would like to say that Mr. Vettas went back in time, and I would like to remind you that during the last few years, we have seen an increase of manufacturing in Greece, especially after the 10-year-long crisis. And this is something positive, and we need to keep it in mind, even though there have been certain concerns expressed lately, especially with regard to exports. The second thing, generally, as a country, we need all sorts of investments. On the other hand, and this has already been mentioned, all investments are not the same. An investment or an increase of an exporting capacity of a country has a different footprint, different impact on the economy. Some people call this a multiplier effect. I would say that an industry requires workforce. An industry pays better compared to other sectors of the economy. It has a large number of suppliers. In other words, it has this ecosystem surrounding it that involves manufacturing and many other processes. And another thing I would like to say about industry, which I deem is very important, even though I'm not an expert, I believe that a country that has an industry and exports can negotiate differently when it comes to geopolitical issues or diplomatic issues. So when you have a country that exports products, you have a country that has a lot of benefits and advantages. And when there has to be a negotiation of certain problems, this country is in a better position to negotiate. So I believe that this is something that we don't often talk about, but in my view plays a very important role. And in order to talk about the future, I have the feeling that the Greek industry needs to embrace innovation. Innovation that is domestically produced or innovation from abroad. To put it simply, it should copy-paste, since this would allow us to create added value. So additional manufacturing and additional exports to countries that can provide us with greater margin. Because, okay, we cannot compete on an equal basis with other countries when it comes to cost. And something else that I would like to mention is the importance of placing emphasis on the brands. You need to promote the brands. And this is easier now since we have the social media that we can use and which are rather accessible when it comes to cost. And I believe that this will help the Greek businesses becoming more extrovert. That's all. I believe that a powerful industry is very important. It has to have a sustainable development because, in my view, industry ensures just that, a better prospect for the Greek economy. Okay, and I would like to give the floor to Mr. Manesis. Could we have a short intervention about the role of the industry? And then could you also say a few words about the main obstacles to the growth of industry in Greece, and which are the obstacles that you are grappling with on your day-to-day operation? Thank you very much. I believe that the gentleman touched upon most of the points I would like to raise with regard to the role of industry in Greece today. So apart from everything that has been already mentioned, I would like to say is that industry in Greece has traditionally been the bigger investor, and especially during the crisis, with 50 billion euros of investments, whereas the industry also ensures supply chain security and at the same time reduces the dependence on tourism, as Mr. Vettas said. At the same time, industry allows the transfer of know-how from abroad. The training programs of the different industries pertain to specialties that cannot be easily applied in other sectors of the economy. And this is very important for the country because it is exactly there that we can base skills development for the future generations and for cost reduction in every sector, not just in industry. At the same time, I would like to add that the contribution of the industry in the area where it operates provides a better prospect for employment for the young generation. It has been observed that industries that operate in an area create 80% of the jobs in the said area. In order to have a strong industry, we need to have a regulatory environment that is friendly to the industry, starting with the public authorities, of course, justice, the efficiency of justice, taxation, energy-related issues that today are very complex. I believe that the current government has made significant efforts to approach all these issues and create a favorable environment to balance the energy cost and to find solutions. The fact is that the United States of America, following the re-election of Trump, will actually push Europe to modify its policy in order to make a shift from the globalization of the open borders, of circulation of goods and free transactions into an era of protectionism with tariffs. And in such an era of protectionism, increasing the productivity is not only required, but is absolutely necessary. Another thing that we need to deal with here in Greece is the fact that we are a member of the European Union, which is going through an existential problem. We read about Volkswagen, Stellantis, and all the problems that have afflicted the car industry. We have seen plants closing down. We hear about Northvolt, the batteries companies, the companies that produce panels, ArcelorMittal, and many others. And we can see that all these companies actually postpone their investment programs in order to see what measures Europe will take in order to ensure this level playing field and therefore be able to proceed. And the other thing that I would like to raise is this huge bureaucracy that characterizes the European Union. In a conference last week, I heard someone saying that the new regulations only for the car industry are 330,000 pages. So you understand the magnitude of the problem I'm talking about. Moreover, it is impossible for the industry to cope with this when every country is using any fuel it wishes, and especially carbon. Countries cannot compete on an equal footing. Of course, we need to promote green transition, but we need to highlight, however, that European Union has this increased energy price because of other reasons, not because there is a shortage of energy. And the last thing I would like to say is that we all need to embrace, and I mean by that the workers, the local communities, the business community, the industry, and all the stakeholders need to realize that it is a good thing to have an industry, that it is a good thing to have an industry growing, since this will bring benefits to all the society. Okay. Mr. Vettas?
What do you think could be done to strengthen the Greek industry in the medium and long term? And then what is the role of the private and the public sector in this course? Well, in the short run, there are specific policy measures that could assist not just the industry, but any other part of the production that has such an outward-looking character, outward-looking features. I have to tell you that I don't see very favorably the discussion on targeted subsidies to select national champions and all the rest. Not because the discussion is wrong, but because it is a discussion that either here in Greece or in Europe could lead us astray. It could become a process where any business group that has greater access to the political leadership could take the lion's share. And I don't want this. What we lack in Europe is we don't have enough competition. And the Draghi report mentions that. One of the reasons that industries and other businesses in the US and Asia is competitive is that they have learned to be competitive from the very, very start within their own country. Now, for the very specific things that you asked me about, I believe that the taxation policy should protect the first and main factor, which is salaried work. There have been some tax breaks in the last years, but with inflation, these tax breaks for medium incomes, they have been reversed due to the non-indexation of taxes. So there is a margin for reduction. As regards investments, they could be assisted with a system of accelerated depreciations instead of the 10 years that we have now, and a series of other measures that have to do with industrial parks and so on and so forth. But all these more short-term and more targeted measures will not have a major effect, a major result, if you wish, if we do not manage to do something now that the economy has been stabilized. That is, to describe a way ahead that will not be doubted, will not be changed. And this is related to how the present government will create the conditions for the next governments and how, what kind of consensus, social and political, will exist. What I mean is that in order to have a major industrial investment, they are not interested in the visibility as to how the policy will be in 2 or 3 years. They're interested in 10 or 20 years' time. And this time of framework is what could unlock such investments, such type of investments. And we must not think that we have to climb a huge mountain. These investments that are needed in order to reach the level of the other economies, given the low base that we are now, are not in the order of tens of billions. It is a reasonable amount. Thank you. Speaking about the day after and speaking about things that have been done, let me go to Mr. Margonis, because Papastratos has made a series of investments in the last years, and I want to focus on those. The investments that you have done, what is their effect and how can they influence the Greek economy at large? Well, for Papastratos, I believe, well, okay, it's the company that I run, but it is a good example of direct foreign investment in the country. Of course, Papastratos was under different ownerships in the past. In 2030, we will have 100 years of existence in the Greek economy. Right now, we are at the stage of implementing the last part of 700 million euros, and we try to see what will be done with the demand abroad in order to include this in a program. Because we're talking about new machinery, we're talking about new personnel, people who have been hired recently During the last 4 years, we have exceeded 1,000 new recruitment, people recruited, as Mr. Manesis said. We are also paying more than 1 billion to direct and indirect taxes yearly. The exports last year exceeded 400 million euros in 40 countries, 300 million euros in 40 countries, with the exception of Japan, which corresponds to more than 90% of the exports. So just the specific product helps a trade balance that would be negative otherwise. But the most important thing for me has to do with the personnel, the people, because Papastratos, as any big industry, creates an ecosystem. You develop people, you train people, you export as well, because we are in a multinational environment, the PMI, the Philip Morris International. They come back, they can go elsewhere, they are well remunerated, they are trained, they are skilled. So we have also suppliers, we have companies that work with us. And I think this is the most important thing at the end of the day. The exports might change from one year to another, the taxes might not be the same. But what remains is the ecosystem. And this is the footprint that each industry wants. But it has to be stable. And I think that the advantage of Papastratos is exactly like that. For 95 years, either under Greek ownership or multinational capital, the company still makes investments. Thank you very much. We have another 7 minutes. So respecting the time allotted, a last round of questions. I will start with you, Mr. Margonis. Since you mentioned Papastratos, what Papastratos has done, what are the major challenges that Papastratos is facing? And at large, the Greek entrepreneurship and economy abroad, and what are the strategies that you plan in order to remain competitive? I will try to be very brief in order for everyone to answer. Challenges. New president in the US, elections in Germany. In France, we will have a crisis in the coming time. Technological development, upgrading that affects the society and the people. In Asia, we have also competition, technology competition between China and the US. The European Union does not respond. So what we need to do is to continue to be productive. Productivity has to be at high levels. We need to continue helping the other companies of Philip Morris for market access, to open up new markets for the new products, and then to continue being as efficient as possible with the challenges that we have. Energy, personnel, increased personnel cost, which due to inflation, it goes rising. But the important thing is to remain stable on the direction that we have taken, to continue our investments, and to be able to increase the exports even more. Thank you very much. You mentioned the cost of energy among the challenges. So I will ask Mr. Manesis, what are the main reasons for this high energy cost in our country, and what are the initiatives, political initiatives, that should be taken according to you to avoid this and to reinforce the competitiveness of the Greek industry? Well, the energy cost is the cornerstone of all economies, and this has entered our lives during the last 2.5 years due to the war in Ukraine. And this increase is related to the European objectives for green transition. Greece has always had a competitive energy cost because we had the hydroelectrical dams, we had abundance of lignite for the production of energy, and this is how the PPC and the industries in the country were raised and progressed. In 2000, we started having natural gas, which was more expensive and not competitive. In order for it to be sustained, we had thousands of subsidies that covered not just the increased cost, but also the profit margin. In the 2010, we had the RES entering our life, but even for the renewables, they had to be subsidized with hundreds of millions of euros, even during the country when we could not pay our bonds during the 2010-20. At the same time, in order for the lignite not become competitive, and generally speaking the coal, in 2005 in the EU, we have started with the CO2 market in order to go towards the green transition and renewable energy sources. Where do we stand today? Now, today, the lignite production is close to zero. We have increased production in RES. We have increased production of electricity due to natural gas, and we have a stable hydroelectrical power production. Although, therefore, we are going along the right path, according to Europe, we are going very wrong as regards the supply security and the cost, because the RES do not produce throughout the day, only when there is sun and wind. And the PVs, even if they increase, the needs for natural gas remain, or they get higher. With the war in Russia, the price of natural gas has increased a lot, so we have increased cost and increased energy mix. Finally, the European model for the energy market, which sets as a price the most expensive production price, has completely failed, and everyone acknowledges that. Some people say that with batteries and with storage and pumping projects we can overcome this problem, but this is not realistic. We believe that these are midnight summer dreams. The pumping and storage projects require a lot of red tape procedures and difficult procedures, so they cannot take place fast. And the batteries are expensive. Even if they are included in the system, this will not reduce the cost. So we need to understand that we live at a time where in America this motto is drill, baby, drill, in order to have natural gas and have cheap energy. In China and in India, everyone buys coal from wherever it is cheap in order to satisfy the energy production. Europe is at a standstill that it has created all by itself with the overambitious objectives for green transition. What can be done? Unfortunately, the changes are structural and not easily reversible. What the European politicians could do would be, instead of pressuring for the price of CO2, is to exert pressure to drop these prices during wartime. This would reduce the energy prices, it would reduce inflation, and it would lead to a calmness to the European political scene, the political stage. In Greece, we could do what other European countries do, that is to have some ceilings to the upper prices of energy, because unfortunately it seems that it is not feasible to retain the offers in the Greek energy stock exchange, which are related to the wholesale market. Thank you very much. I would like to ask Mr. Vettas for a final comment. Human resources and innovation. How could this affect the Greek industry, and how can they work as catalysts for further development, further growth? Out of the 22 seconds that remain, I will say in 5 seconds that in energy we have to distinguish the most short-term results to the ones that will come in 10 to 20 years, in the sense that new technologies that seem to be coming, and seem is an important word, will have a lower variable cost, but they have a high stable cost. And there is a major issue of financing this transition. As regards human resources, of course, need training and skilling and upskilling. Our country does not attract, but it throws people away, chases them away, and no economy can proceed if it is not attractive to people who are trained. Our educational system could be the main lever for having foreigners coming and remaining here. And there is a third dimension, which is usually not put on the table, and this is the following. Through technology, we could have a substitution, especially of unskilled work, through robotics, systems of AI, etc. The Greek manufacturing has not done the steps required towards this direction. And now that we see that work becomes more expensive and more rare, it will inevitably go towards this path. Thank you very much. I think that respecting the time of everyone, the Greek industry has margins for improvement. It is a pillar for the Greek economy, and for sure the human resources and innovation and technology can help for the next day. Thank you very much, all the participants. Thank you all for attending.